Ma'am, the waiting room is open now, so whomsoever who wants to join, they can join now. So after 15 minutes or 10 minutes, we can actually turn on the waiting room so that people who join after that, they'll be on the waiting room, and we'll let them on case by case basis.
Yes, good enough. And can you have a check on those who are there in the waiting room after 15 minutes? That's fine. Yeah, thank you. Very good afternoon to all those who have already joined. We still have 5 more minutes to start with it. So please stay online. We'll wait for the others to join. Exactly at 2:30, we'll get it started. Thank you. I'll try to share this. This is the screen seen here, software testing screen.
Yes, ma'am, we can see.
Yeah. A very good afternoon to you all. Let's get it started. So I'd like to introduce myself to all of you who have joined here. I'm Deivapreeta. I'm associated with Computer Science Department in SRM IST. That's with the Chennai campus, Vadaparni. So I'm basically from industry. So I have close to 13 plus years of industry experience. I was with the IT industry all through. So my career began as a developer way back. It was all, when I started, it was all Unix and CE coding type of development environment with which I started on. And then I moved on to take up some leadership roles, and then I was a senior project manager handling some projects with HCL Technologies that was on semiconductor domain. We were into that. That was my last set of project. Further, I took up my research that was on software reliability. So I basically belong to this domain, this testing and reliability of software. So my research was on testing. In fact, it was more on reliability. It is mostly on when to stop testing. So that was to come up with some reliability models. We have arrived on few models which could assess when exactly decision can be taken on stopping testing in real-time environments. That was my PhD study, to put it in short. Further to the completion of it recently, I've switched over to an academic line. So I've taken up this role with SRM recently. I've been doing a couple of corporate training programs, all on software project management, training people on processes, on software engineering, testing concepts, and all that. So I've been doing that for close to 10 years now. So that's the introduction from my end. I would like to invite you all for this workshop, which is planned for 4 days starting from today. From what I could see with the registration link and all those details, we can see a lot of UG students who had registered. Not sure how many of them have really joined today. Somewhere from first year to second year, we had a lot of participants who have registered. Looks like few research scholars are also part of this meeting, and few faculty members. I invite all of you to the meeting today. So we would be focusing on software testing. So this particular workshop is to give a glimpse on how testing can be applied in the industry today. Now, if you see the agenda, this is how it has been structured. The day one, today it will be entirely on what is testing, why should we get on to testing. Like, I would be focusing more on making you understand how testing is shaped up today in the industry, what level of importance it has, and all that. So we will be seeing, it is important that we see some development life cycle models, how it is applied and all that. Towards the end, we will take some test case writing exercise. Small things like, how manual testing can happen, how do you really frame test cases and all that. Then day two, we are planning to get on to the second phase of it. Today, if we are looking at test case writing. That will be at the end after we finish the introduction. And tomorrow will be a logical continuation of it, where we'll be looking on to all this execution of test cases. See, the second phase in this testing would be how the bugs are reported, how people really track and take it forward, those steps. Couple of open source tools here and there we can use. See, now testing is more of creativity, trying to understand how and all test cases can be written, what is to be tested. The test engineers should have an insight on all those things. So as we go through different techniques, as appropriate, some small tools will also be introduced so that we can see how it is done with that. So tomorrow we'll be focusing on these things, and that will be phase 2, which means once you have started text execution, what matters the most would be to see how these test scenarios are tracked. What happens if your test case fails? What do we do after that? This is an important phase in most of the organizations today. So we would be seeing about all this bug reporting, bug tracking. That's a major chunk of work which is done today. Now, day 3, Agile is picking up. It's the latest all over. So we have to understand what is this Agile testing. It is also important to know something about this API testing. We can see how this tool Postman can be used for that. We'll also be seeing something on the performance testing. So day 1 to 3, I would be running all these 3 days. On day 4, we have a special guest invited. Is Mr. Gopika Bhaskar Pandian. He's the DGM with HCL Technologies. Whatever we learn on day 1 to 3, you will have to associate it in real time. Like, he would be representing the industry level use cases. He'll make you understand how important testing is today and how it is applied. In fact, one major topic he's planning to cover on that day is he'll be walking over on optimization of testing, which is a very important trend today. How testing can be optimized. It's not enough if you just start testing and keep on doing it. It is equally important that we learn how to optimize it. So what are all the industry trends? And importantly, since we have a crowd of a first year to third year computer science graduates, undergraduate program people who are expected to attend this program, we want to give them a clear idea on industrial expectation on the fresh graduates in terms of this testing domain. What is expected? Now, most of you would know what is expected from you. If there are some final year students who are attending it today, you would be aware for profiles like developer, what does the industry expect? By now you are trained on it, and I'm sure you are into some campus initiatives where you are trying your hands to get placed in good industries and all that. But then from testing perspective, what is it that any IT industry expects from a fresh graduate? All these things will be on day 4, which will be done by Mr. Gopi from HCL Technologies. So now I'm moving on to the content today. We are going to see some set of introduction part on what is testing and how all these happens. We can see all that. I would like to have this entire thing in a very interactive way. So any type of anything that you want to discuss on end of every module, you'll be given a time to raise your questions on that. If you have some questions, you can definitely share. And in between, if there are some inputs required from you, like on developing the test cases and all that, you can still share your inputs at those points. Now here, if you see, we are into an era where everywhere, every piece of thing that we use, we have that software, which is almost there everywhere. So whatever you use, it's like, automobile industry, or you're talking about any mission critical applications where we are talking about launching all this in the mission space, or be it any type of any other medical appliances that we are using. All these things are what we call as mission critical applications. I'm talking about those embedded systems where we have the software running on your typical machines this way, where embedded systems in the sense here, we are talking about the hardware software interaction here. That particular thing, I'm sure some of you who are in the final year attending this workshop and all would have gone through Internet of Things. You will be aware of this IoT implementations, which are very dominant in all this embedded field. Now, this is the condition today where anything that we look at or anything that we use definitely has a piece of software involved in it. If the world is turning to this level, it is important that the software that runs on all this runs without any defects. Is it practically possible? Can we even think of delivering a software with zero defects? Now that takes us into a lot of quality parameters where we are talking about having less number of defects in place, Six Sigma and all that. I'm not going to get onto all that. It's not in our scope though. But those things, those strategies and technologies today, in fact, talk about reducing defects. But all that ultimately boils down to testing efficiency. A common myth amongst the students today, people who have opted for computer science or IT based courses, they all have an impression in mind that if they have to secure a career in a successful career in IT industry, all that is required is to sit and write code. They trust their competency in programming has to be high. Very true, yes, that is there. But there are several other options. Consider students today who, after taking this particular course, are not finding themselves that competent in programming. There is nothing to worry. You still have a lot of options in the industry today, in the IT industry, where you have some roles as test engineers, or you can take up as quality assurance roles. Those things will still make you connected to this particular software development work, but not as a developer. Nevertheless, I'm not trying to say like a test engineer will never code. Of course, it's a world of automation today. So even testing is going through a lot of automation, but then it's not restricted to a particular technology or mastering, writing a particular program and all that. Test engineers should know how users would interact with the software. It is more of a creative thinking that they should have. They should be able to come up with some test cases. Coming up with test cases, we are going to see. I would say it's more of analytical thinking rather than whether you are good in Java or Python, all that immaterial. As long as a test engineer can understand the use cases of the software system, it's more than sufficient. For developing test scripts, high-end programming is not required. You can still use any of this. You have this scripting in Java, Python and all that, which only requires minimal programming competency, but it definitely requires you to think more, understand about the system, know what the use cases are, and develop the test cases accordingly. This is just to give you a pitch on how important testing is today. It's not considered inferior to the software developer role. That's a myth. In case any people in your pre-final, final year, if you are tuned that way, come out of that myth. It has a very important role in par with the development resources in any organization. Now, I would like to tell you my real-time experience in the industry on how the customers give their requirements and how we finally take it up and how we deliver. This could look a bit exaggerated. It may not be this type of an unpleasant experience every time, but definitely there had been experiences like this where the customer's requirement never maps with the end result. Now look at this. Let's say there is a customer who's explaining today to you on what he wants. Let's say this picture, if you look at, this is something he wants. He wants a type of swing this way, let's say, which can be put on the branch of the tree. Let's just take it for the case of discussion. Let's say this is how he has explained. Now remember, the setup in any IT organization, the link is this way. You have two important stakeholders. Who are they? You have customer at one end. He is the key person. So we are working for the customer's requirement. Who's the other party involved? We have the organization which is going to develop the software as per this customer's requirement. There are other stakeholders too. Who are the other stakeholders who will be involved? This particular developing organization will not be able to deliver all by its own. They may need a support of some suppliers, vendors. It could be for getting them some hardware equipments. It could be some software licenses. So at any level, there can be suppliers or vendors who are involved. So let's put them into a separate group. So we have the customers, we have this developing organization, we have the suppliers and the vendors, the third group. So this developing organization is going to get whatever is required from the vendor, and then it is going to supply to the customer. So now you think about the communication link between these three parties, and you can understand how strong it should be in order that the right product is delivered as per the customer's requirement. Now, if this is how the customer explains it, now this is how the project leader understands it. No exaggeration, it happens. Why could be there is a gap this way? You see, not understanding the language, nothing like that. Here, what we are trying to convey is not all customers are clear on what they want. So there could be different type of development activities involved. See, one type could be they are working on expanding their product further. A very common case. They are already in association with a development organization. There was one portion which was already developed for them. Now they come back to the same organization to get the software upgraded. Then what they are trying to explain will make sense to the team. We already have a preliminary version which is set in place. Now, if you are talking about these things, see now how the customer explained it and how the project leader understands it, there itself we can see a gap. This is because the customer is trying to convey all his desires, his wants. I want this, I want that. He has no clarity on the feasibility of it. He doesn't care. Why should he? To him, he is paying the development organization. He expects the development organization to deliver all that which he wants. Is it fitting in the budget? Are those requirements really feasible? What are his priorities? Those things are never told by the customer. So from the first picture, when you move on to the second picture, you can see this is what the customer explains and this is how it is understood. Now move on to analyst. This is how he designs it. You can see how that requirements is slowly translating to a meaningless form, not anywhere connecting to what the customer explained. Now see this. How is the programmer writing that? Slowly that requirements is moving on from one stakeholder to the other stakeholder in different forms. Intentionally, the requirement is not distorted. It so happens that the requirements are that ambiguous that they can translate it only this way. So when it comes to the programmer, he writes a code this way. Now, how does the business consultant describe it? You would have seen, if you are a student, you would have at least heard or studied about it. There are different roles in an organization. We have all these business consultants who are involved in the sales of the software system, the application that you develop. These business consultants, if this is what the customer has asked for, they try to show as though this is what they are creating, as though they are providing a value add to the customer to give it in this form. Now, how is this project typically documented? Absolutely no documents. This is the case with most of the organizations. They think documentation is overhead. They don't care to do any type of documentation there, not realizing the importance of software engineering aspects. Now, software engineering by itself is a totally related topic, but a totally different context. So we will not get on to software engineering processes, but you can try to understand that if this is how it is documented, that is all poor process which an organization follows. They are not valuing the process. Documentation is important. Now see here, finally what happens? This is how the operations install it. Keep comparing it from the first picture. Where are we now? But see how the customer is built. All that the customer is built is elevated to this level. But never have they met the requirements here. And support phase. What is this support phase here? Always remember, once the application that you develop and that you deliver to the customer, do not think that the role ends there. When I keep referring to you every time, please relate it to you as a development organization, you as a developer, or you as a test engineer. That is my reference here. So when you are delivering it to the customer, what happens? After that, can we simply vanish? Because we are all done and we are paid. So we get the money from the customer. We cannot move out of the scene. That is not possible. If the development organization is smart, the customer is equally smart. Whoever you are building that software application is equally smart. They have certain things written in the contract. We call this service level agreement. The very first aspect of it would be your support. After that particular software is delivered, support is required. Support in what form? Will you just be overseeing his regular operations? Support is to fix the bugs that he faces, the problems or issues that he faces after you hand over the product to the customer. Wouldn't you feel bad if there are more support issues? Do not look at it in the other side. So looking at it on a lighter vein, it looks more like more bugs, more money because the customer pays for it. But then more bugs, less quality. So any development organization should not look at the support phase as a money-making phase. It should be a very thin, lean thing where not many bugs should surface. How was it supported? See here, this particular project, they have supported the customer only this way. Now, look at this first picture and this last picture. We can also put the blame on the customer here. The customer, what he wanted is this. What he explained is this way. So can you see the problem with the customer himself? But the customers who are the sponsors for your project will never want to take the blame on them. They would like you to confirm on their requirements and give them a product which is very trustworthy, in the sense like a quality aspect of it. They expect it to be very, very high. If this is the scenario, maybe it looks a bit exaggerated, but it is happening in every organization. I worked in a lot of projects where the customer requirements, as explained by him, against what he actually wants, will have a difference this way. So I'm trying to make you understand how important testing is. At several different phases, as you develop, there are going to be different testing activities that are involved so that you are in a position to deliver. What is our objective? Ultimately, what do we want? First of all, any customer would want to buy a product which meets his requirement. Very base thing. Second of all, he wants it to be defect free. Are we achieving that 0% defects? Let us not look upon it. At least the defects which are there in the product should be very minimal. So don't think that those people who do the programming alone are the big heroes of the entire development. People who test and validate can only confirm if the product is working fine. Two things that a testing engineer has to confirm. What are the two things from what we see here? First of all, there should not be any defects. Yes, but it should also work as per the customer requirements. If your developer has developed something which works well, but not meeting the customer requirement, it is still a big crime. It's not considered to be of high quality. So this is where testing pitches in. In today's IT industry's environment, this is the case where we have confused customers, where we have the project team which is equally confused. And finally, we have the test engineers who never even know what was the original version of the requirement. They start testing with whatever they have or whatever they understand as requirements. And finally, we have a product in place which does not make anyone happy. We shouldn't land there. That's why testing is considered as a very, very important activity in any organization, any software development organization. Now, what is this testing all about? So anybody who can understand this testing, it is important that we understand the difference between software testing and software quality assurance. A lot of people, even those who are working today as test engineers in IT organizations, have this confusion. Please be aware, final year students, if you are aspiring to take up a career in IT organizations doing a testing role, there are two different roles. We have somebody as SQAs, software quality assurance, that is the role. And you also have SQC, which is software quality control. Those are the test engineers. So what is the difference? What is software quality? What is software testing? That's a very basic thing which we have to understand. Now, when we talk about software quality assurance, software quality assurance process, what is it and what is software testing process? When we talk about QA process, please remember that is an act of prevention. The QA processes will attempt to prevent these defects from entering your software. That is a type of prevention that is done, which means what? You are trying to ensure well in advance. You're trying to see that those defects do not get injected into your software. But what about testing? This is about taking your software which is under development, whichever is being done, taking that software under development and trying to give a reliable system or a reliable solution to the customer. Now, what do we mean by a reliable system here? What is this reliability? How can we define it? See, these are some very basic terms which at least as people doing IT computer science courses, you must be aware on the differences of all this. It's not enough if we only understand to write code in some latest programming languages. What do we mean by the reliability of the software? The number of failures that happens in a software at a particular instance of time. That is what we call as reliability. So now what is the expectation here? We want to find those bugs and defects, remove all that before it goes to the customer. When I talk about a prevention process, I'm talking about QA as a prevention process. Prevention process in the sense here we are talking about a type of risk mitigation. Now, what is risk? When I say risk mitigation, every term that I introduce, let's have a clarity on that. All these small English terms in relevance to the technical context of software testing, it is important that we understand. What do we, how can we even, call something as a risk here? What is this? This particular risk is some uncertain event. It's not a regular English definition in terms of software quality or software testing. Please understand the risk as some uncertain event, which means what? It may happen or it may not happen. Any risk is identified through two parameters. One is the probability. Will it happen? So will this particular test case fail? Will it happen? The probability. Second thing is impact. What is this impact? Okay, what will happen if this fails? That, in fact, is driven through the type of failure that happens. Okay, so now let's take a very common example. Let's talk about this risk mitigation using a very common example, and then we'll relate it to testing then. Let's say you are learning to drive. Let's say, you are trying to take a license and you want to drive a four-wheeler. You've just learned, and let's say you are on the roads now to drive. What is the risk involved here? Risk here is a potential threat that we are talking about. We'll take a simple example and relate it to how such risks are associated with software. Now we'll take a real-time risk which anybody can face. So you are a first-time user of that car, or you have learned driving just now, and you are trying to drive on your own, all alone. in your new car for the first time in a busy road. What is the risk associated here? Most of us are aware, at least the traffic in Chennai, we are aware. Even though you are an experienced driver, you will have your own difficulties on handling the traffic congestion. If you are on the road for the very first time with a fresh new license, what is the risk involved? Any casualty, you have a big risk of going and hitting any pedestrian or any other person who comes on a two-wheeler. This could be a risk that is involved. How do we mitigate this risk? I'm trying to relate it to your quality assurance process. Then we'll come to testing. In this case, we want to prevent that risk from happening. Can we do that? Here, we can probably follow some best measures from our end to follow the road rules and all that. But the risk is still there. It cannot be eliminated. So somebody can argue, okay, I'll take an insurance. I'll go for an insurance, maybe a comprehensive insurance for my car. So that if I have, in case of any accident, then my recovery is good. I can use that insurance for the recovery. Good enough, yes. So now having an insurance is a way of handling that risk. But in this case, the chance of hitting that person is not eliminated. We are not eliminating that risk, but we are trying to handle the consequence of the risk. Right? Risk is not eliminated. Even though you have an insurance, it doesn't really matter. You can still hit anybody on the road. The same concept works for all your software system. However, you are trying to handle the risk, handling risk, all this mitigation is prevention. Wherever possible, only we can mitigate. In all other cases, no, we cannot mitigate. We cannot really prevent it from happening. We can only come up with some corrective measures. These are the basic two terms. If you are going through a software testing course or a software quality course, two terms which at least by end of the course you should know the difference. One is mitigation, other one is contingency. Now mitigation is what? Mitigation is prevention. Prevention in the sense ensuring that it does not happen. All the time we cannot prevent things from happening. Sometimes you only may have to let it happen, see if it happens, and if it happens, let it happen. And after it happens, you try to put in a corrective action in place. Like let's say you have a data center. You are having an IT organization where you have a data center which is set up for it. Let's say that is set up in Chennai. And let's say there is one weather forecast. So there is something like a tsunami which is forecasted to hit that particular area where you have your data center. How do you mitigate? Can we even mitigate this risk? Risk is identified. It has been announced. There is a forecast. So we'll have to go with it. Risk is identified. But in this case, can we prevent it? So if there is a person who says, oh, my data center is having the entire data, which is going to even serve n number of business applications. So I would like to really control it or mitigate that risk by having a big iron wall constructed around that data center. Does it make sense? How can we even do that when we are talking about some tsunami hit which is forecasted? So some such risks like this can never be mitigated, can never be prevented. First of all, I don't even know if something is going to hit. So we never know that. Now here, we are talking about such risks which can only be, we can only go over and take these risks and come up with a contingency. Contingency here is a correction that we are talking about. Let it happen. In case it's going to hit my data center, I cannot prevent it from happening. So what is a contingency plan that you can have here? Instead of having a data center A, here I would try to have a disaster recovery plan. I would try to have a backup, a replication of all these servers. Maybe in Bangalore, I will have a backup ready, so that at the event of this tsunami hitting in Chennai, I would at least have a backup arrangement to switch over to my Bangalore data center branch, in which way I can take a corrective action. So this is not mitigation. I'm trying to come up with a corrective action. Now, when we are talking about this testing and quality assurance process, these are the two things that we are talking about. First of all, we have to see if we can prevent the defects from happening. All that is software quality process. We are not getting onto it. That's one way of ensuring that defects are kept aside from your software. The second way of ensuring that the defects are kept away, we couldn't prevent. These developers were told n number of times to use some good coding practices. They were instructed how to really do, how to work on all this. In spite of all these guidelines and processes being told to them, they did not follow. We have some defects in the code. Let's assume. So all our quality assurance process on preventing the defects did not work, or let's say it worked 50%. Some help from it, yes, was there, but it could not thoroughly stop the defects from being injected. So what happens? These defects are now there in the software. How will we find the defects, or who will find those defects, and how can we ensure that it doesn't reach the customer? So that becomes important here. So what we have to do here is we have to ensure that those errors, now we have injected some defects there, not intentionally, unknowingly. The developer who has come up with that program has developed in such a way that it has some defects or bugs in the system. So now what happens? If that is not caught at least during the development or after the development, what will happen? It will leak to the customer. I will be selling or a particular service or a software application which will reach the customer with the defects. Why? Because it wasn't tested well. I couldn't identify the defects in it. My testing in this case has been ineffective or inefficient. In such cases, that moves on to the customer with the defects. This is what we want to prevent by having a sound testing process in place to control those defects and bugs in the system that we develop. This is an idea of why do we really test. So I have to re-emphasize here that do not think that every software that is made, it's a myth where people think that the entire software development process is all about coding. It is definitely not. One major portion is development. The second major portion is to test if there are no defects that are made in your particular software application. How to test? Only if you know the requirements as to what it has to satisfy, then we'll be able to test. So now there are some terms which are interchangeably used, or maybe certain things which people do not understand, or they synonymously use it. We have to understand that there is a difference between, maybe most of you would be thinking that error, bug, defect, failure, all are the same. Please understand it is not the same. Once you are becoming a qualified test engineer or anything, you will understand how these things are totally different. Error and defect is not the same. Let's understand what these terms typically mean. What do we mean by the error? Any human action that causes any problem, any mistake is an error. Now let us say you are trying to get a software application, let's say a net banking, internet banking, which most of you can understand. So let's say there is an internet banking application. Who develops for whom? Let's say an organization A. There is a development organization A who is developing this internet banking application, and that's given to a customer. Again, two terms that you have to be clear. There is a customer, there is an end user. Both are not the same, need not be the same in most of the cases. Sometimes it can be the same. What is that customer and what is that end user terminology? Now, in this case, if you take this net banking software application, what we are talking about is the customer is the one who purchases that application from you. Let's say Infosys is developing a net banking solution for State Bank of India. Now, if you take this SBI, so SBI is the customer for Infosys, but who are the end users? SBI's customers who are going to use that application to log into SBI system to do their day-to-day bank transactions. Okay, so that would be the way it flows. The flow goes that way. Now, error. What is that error? Let us say there is a person, there is an user who tries to log into the system. When he is trying to log into the system by mistake, so he is a registered user. He is a net banking user for the SBI application, registered one. So he has his own username and password, let's say. Now he is trying to log in, and error is a human action, so which is done in an incorrect form. Now let's say he tries to enter something. He tries to give a password there, or a username or a password there, which is wrong. Then that is an error, just a mistake in the human action. When do we call it a defect? These three terms can be used interchangeably. A defect, bug, fault, these three terms will sync. Only error is different. This is all synonymously used. Now, what is this fault? Fault actually gets surfaced through some human action. Through one of those use cases, the fault gets surfaced. So in this case, by entering a wrong username or a wrong password, we are not talking about any defect there. That is a human mistake. Had he given a right username and a right password as per the defined rules or as per the registration that he has done earlier, then the system should let him in. Now, what is the defect in this case? What would be the defect in this case? Here we are talking about the problem in the system itself. Let us say there is a user who tries to come up with a peculiar combination of the password. As per the password rules, let's say it is allowed. Let's say the SBI net banking application tells you, like it allows this many characters and all that, then it is going to let you in. It can be a combination of lowercase, uppercase, numbers, special characters, and all that. That is the requirement, password requirement. Now there is one user who has used all those combinations as allowed. As per the password policy, he has created a very complex password and he has tried to log in, let's say. If this is what he has done, in spite of that, the system throws an error or it hangs, let's say. A very frustrating use case for the end user, if the system is not letting him to log in. What is the problem here? There is a defect. Why? Why is that password not allowed? It is a valid password. This is one particular combination which the user has creatively thought and deployed, which the end user has thought and deployed, which the developer did not think. It was never tested for this combination. They never found that one such defect existed. Then of course he will give up, he'll try a new password and go on. But then there is a defect in the system, there is a bug. Now that particular defect has not surfaced at all or was not even tested through any use case or any test case so far. That is what it means. That is fault. So any error will tap if there is any fault in the system that will get surfaced. The fault relates to a failure. Now what is the failure here? The end action. Defect here is not accepting a valid password. As per the rules, it has to accept, but it is not accepting. That is the bug. That is the fault. What is the failure? The end action. What is the end action here? The user is not able to use that internet banking facility at all. Is not even able to log in to the internet banking application. This is the failure. So error can unsurface a fault. A fault leads to a failure. Risk we have just seen. So these are the three things which you have to understand before we even try to write some test cases or see how a software application can be tested. Now, one thing that you have to remember is not always all defects get trapped during your testing scenario. That's why it is important that you are able to come up with a series of scenarios or a way of testing it, all possible combinations. Towards the end of this module, we'll just take a simple login page and you all can interact and maybe share your inputs on what are all the possible test cases we can think of. That level of that many test cases or test scenarios should be thought in order that we test it thoroughly so that the user doesn't have any failure that he encounters. Okay, so now not all defects. If there could be a defect in some dead code. See, for example, what is a dead code? Maybe you are making some changes to your software, you are upgrading it, or for some reason that module's functionality is changed, so you get to have a type of code that is never executed on any condition. That is what we call as dead code. So if that particular piece of code is having a bug, let it have. Why? No use case is even going to get that surfaced. So we don't have to bother about it. So we are only concerned about the code that gets executed. Now, when we are talking about the code that gets executed, think about the portion of the code in your entire application that gets more frequently executed. You have bugs in your login screen. Nobody will ever tend to use your application. That's a core functionality. There can be n number of functions your application offers. Not all may be used by all users, but login anybody has to do. They have to sign in, they have to sign up, and then start using it. There itself, if there are some scenarios that are left untested, and that particular defect gets trapped when the end user is trying to log in, then that shows your inefficiency in testing. So there can be a single defect, but it can lead to a wide range of failure systems. Now, in order that we understand how important testing is, these are all some very common use cases which are discussed to make people understand the cost factor, how much money we lose because of the defects. Because of the defects means what? Here we have not tested it properly. So here if you see, we are talking about some examples here where you have $59 billion annual loss. That was for one infrastructure testing which was not done properly. And then when we are talking about some web application failure, these are all real numbers which are all often seen as some typical real-time examples to make people understand how important it is to test the software completely. So if you see, there was one defect way back in 2006 and all that. So in that Amazon.com, where any type of entry when you are trying to add to the cart and all that, it was turning into a double discount, which was not the real requirement, or which was not the real functionality. What happens in such cases if you are talking about all these e-commerce sites, when you're going to buy something, if there is a defect where if it is a problem to the end user, then things like your items in the cart gets doubled, then he pays for it, he is in problem. We are talking about the provider, the service provider, where unnecessary discounts are applied on things which were not supposed to be applied. Then we are seeing it from the other end, they are at loss. So these things are where the software application eventually goes through a heavy loss because of these factors. And there can be any type of security vulnerabilities, like that also should be tested. See, it's very important, depending on your type of application, all type of testing should be done on it. Now, if we are talking about your system being vulnerable to security issues, any threats that form, then if a proper testing is not done, this was reported by Symantec, as we see here. They had some problems because of the faulty software. Now, all this, is because of inefficient testing. These are some more examples here where we can see huge money being lost due to the software not being tested fine. Again, inefficiency here. We are trying to find faults. See, what is our objective here when we try to do a testing? The testers should find these faults well in advance before the users find them. That is more important. Now, when we talk about this, when I say like, this many $1 billion have been lost, what are we trying to convey here? What is it that we are trying to infer? This only indicates how important it is to test a software completely. We'll have to test it in such a way that that software testing is becoming more and more important. It's very important. that you test a software thoroughly. This is also important in any organization. You should be in a position to understand what is it that we are trying to test. When we test, we cannot blindly test. Now, down the line in the second or third day of the workshop, we are going to see different testing techniques. I'm talking about testing in a broader perspective today. When we narrow it down, we will be talking about some techniques. White box, black box testing. What do we mean by unit testing? Even if you are going to be a developer all through, or scale up technically through those lines, tomorrow when you get onto an organization, it is important that you understand how an engineer, a test engineer, is testing your code. As a developer, you will have some responsibilities on testing and ensuring its functionality. Beyond that, when your piece of code, please remember, each one of you will be writing only one module or a piece of code that will be a portion of your bigger application. So if we are trying to develop a web-based application, there is one person who's given this login module. And then let us say it is some e-commerce where we buy. So this purchase part is coded by a second person. Then the transaction done with the server on all this payment transaction, that is being coded by a third developer. Like this, depending on the size and the complexity of your application, we will have anywhere from 3 developers minimum to n number of developers who could be involved. Each one of them are only seeing their portion of the program which they are developing. Unless you have a bigger picture on how this entire application is going to be hosted on the web and how it is to be used, you will not add value to the entire application. We are talking about aspects of integration. Your piece of code alone will not be your entire application. That's going to be integrated with too many other modules that are developed by other developers in your own team. One common mindset. Let's say you develop something, and when you test, you will not find any issues with it. We are always happy with whatever we develop. When we test, we'll feel contented. Maybe we find 1 or 2 defects. Then we will fix that and feel happy that we are having any code that executes is not considered to be working fine. The code which compiles and runs, it's a bare minimal requirement for that piece of software. Is it meeting that requirement? Are there ways in which this code could fail? Would we ever test? Every developer will have a pride on his own code, and it's a common mentality. We never want to accept the mistakes or the flaws in our code. Sometimes no, it's not intentional. We never know. We can never have a third eye to even see all that. We are more focused and we are more convinced that what we have written is executing. There are some basic test cases which we run and see, and it is all working. This is called unit testing, where the developer tests his own piece of code with the user data which he thinks is valid. But the real-time user data is much, much different. Like how we were talking about a net banking application, where the password policy allows you to create something. You never tried, you were too lazy to try n number of combinations to see if that particular password policy is taken care by your piece of code. You messed up something there, you simply did not try. You are thinking it will support, but it is not supporting. So who tests all this? There will be a test engineer who will work concurrently with this development team to see how this entire thing really goes on, how it typically works. The test engineer will work hand in hand. Now remember, you have to understand how we all structure our teams. Way back in the industry, the structure is like this. This entire workshop, our intention is to make you align to how things are done back in the real time at the industry. Come out of the small coding exercises which you are today doing as part of your lab exercises. That is just to learn the technology. That is just to learn or acquire the programming skills in that particular programming language. So I know to create a linked list, I can traverse. Yes. So now you have learned to do it in any object-oriented programming, good enough. No customer is going to come to you to ask you to develop a linked list and give it to him. That is a portion of a small code or the logic which in turn will be deployed or used in a bigger application development. So why are you getting trained this way? At this point of time, our intention for the UG graduates like you who are into computer science and IT is to make you understand how that programming should be done. But once you are done, once you finish your final year, get back to the industry, you will be placed in a team who is working with a real-time customer who wants to build a bigger application where all your programming techniques can be applied. But then we'll have to know how it integrates, how it works, how it gets tested. So coming back to my first point here, the development team and the testing team are two different teams in any organization. Only in very small organizations where they cannot afford a separate testing team, they will ask their developers to test the code. How no, will there not be a bias in that? It would definitely be there, but they cannot afford a testing team. So leave such cases. Those are all small IT companies which I'm talking about, where the developers will do the test engineers role. I'm sure most of you are going to get placed in big banners after you finish your current UG course, wherein you will be part of one of those teams. So you cannot do a dual role. Why is it the case? What is the idea here? The test engineer and the developer, both of them will start their work right when the requirements are freezed. The same copy of the requirement document will be given to the development team, and one more copy will be given to the test engineers. The test engineers should not be concerned on how it is coded, what language they are using, who is coding it, how many lines of code are generated. Nothing is required for them. They should not know. It's not that they need not know, they should not know because of any bias that could be applied. Maybe he has a friend in the development team, so he thinks he's a very pakka developer and can never make mistakes. So when 10 modules are given to him to test it in a biased way, he thinks only the other people can make mistakes and tests that. That is not the right way of doing a testing. So they will ensure that these two teams work separately, because the test engineers will start writing test cases not by seeing the code. There is one technique which we are going to see, where we are going to go through the code and write some testing where the coverage will be tested. All that will be tested. But I am talking about a normal case where we are black box testing, where we are not bothered on how that is implemented. We don't even want to know what is this programming logic. Why should the test engineer know? So why are they doing like this? If they could segregate these two teams right in the beginning and have them as two different teams, then taking each requirement, they can develop a test case. And this development team taking each requirement, they will start developing the code. When this test case is executed against that module of code, then the defects can be identified. So that is how these two teams will typically work with each other. Now, a typical testing mindset. So if you have any professional tester, so if you are planning to be a professional tester, you should approach it with a mindset that the product has defects. They are having you in the team to add value. Adding value here is finding defects in the product. So you should be with an open mind that the product will have defects. There are defects and I'm going to find it out. So that should be the type of approach that we have. Now, it is always important that you capture these defects much early. Let us say right during the requirements phase itself. If you are able to go through the requirements, if you are able to do a requirements review and find a set of defects there itself at that point of time, the cost involved in fixing that is very minimal. Obviously, we have not even started the development. Resources were not deployed on getting that code ready. So at a much earlier phase, here and all your quality assurance will play a role. So it is all, getting done much earlier. So that would be very less. What happens if you find a defect after the software designing is completed? Software design, as all of you know, we are talking about a blueprint. You have the complete, the higher level and the lower level components designed and kept ready. What happens if a defect is found at that stage? Fine, still fine. At least we have not started developing. better. If you have found in the requirements fetch, much better. Nevertheless, even if you have found now, we are still fine. At least some cost is saved. I have not involved my developers as yet. There is no development effort in. But if you are finding it after this coding phase starts, and later after the entire implementation is over, it is n times more cost that you're going to waste on fixing the defect. So my point here is, don't think that I can write a code. My job is to give an executable code. If you are a developer, you should not have a thought that all that I have to do is to write a code that runs. It is the job of the tester to find the defects. Do not have this intention. You will have to take the accountability for the number of defects that are identified in that particular module of code that you write. There should be some sense of quality, some quality consciousness and awareness when you develop a code. All this, when you go back to the industry, like let's say when you get on to the industry, say after 1 or 2 years down the line, maybe you are in second or third year now, you will see it is important to write a quality code. It is the job of the testers to find defects with it. Nevertheless, you have to ensure that you write a piece of code where the defects are minimal. So remember, single pass of testing is always not enough. Can one pass of testing uncover all the defects there? Why single pass of testing is not enough? Let us say there is a test engineer who finds a defect. What is the cycle here? Once the test engineer finds a defect, it goes to the development team. They will pinpoint that I am running this particular use case and this system is failing. So that is sent back to the developer. Now the developer comes up with a fix. Why is it failing? Maybe some condition was not handled, something was missed out there. So the developer tries to fix that code. Now 50% of the developers have this tendency. When they are working on a particular piece of code to fix a problem, they introduce a new problem. They do some patchwork to their code, only focused on this particular defect. So they touch some areas of code and make some corrections there, not thinking this line of code is also called by some other function or some other class, which may have a serious impact when that particular use case is executed. Without thinking that, they make some small changes. So what happens if they make some changes that way? Then there is a possibility that this defect will not come. So for that, he has given a defect fix, but he has introduced a new defect. Who will know that, or how will we get to know? Only when a later use case uncovers the defect. So that is why it is always important that you will have to run several times. This testing has to be done. The test maturity level, different techniques of testing and all, we'll see little later. I prefer to move on to a small, we'll take a small use case and we'll try to see all this. We'll come back in the next session. We'll try to see. So too much of concepts and introduction has been done. So it's time we will think and see how we can write some test cases. Okay, so now let us say you have an UI this way. Let's say we are going to get on to some manual testing scenarios. You are the test engineer, put yourself in that shoes. Start thinking. It's a very simple page. I'm just showing you something where you can sign up as a user. Once you sign up, you can log in, where you are required to give just the username and password, and then you can sign in. You can sign in through Facebook, or you can sign in through your Google ID, whatsoever. Let's say this is your particular screen which you're going to test. Some UI based testing. Let's say this is an application. For now, we will consider this is some web based application which we are going to test. If you are writing a test case for this, how should it look like? First of all, it should have a test case title. There are, see, most of the manual testing tools are as simple as, I don't want to type these things on a Google Sheet and show. Manual testing will only require you to use the Google Sheets very effectively on building up different text cases. So there is no big tool involved for that. But what is more important is how you think on testing this. How many number of test scenarios are you able to see even through the small single screen this way? What are all the test cases that we can think about? So first of all, when you enter, you will have to come up with a test case title. Let me call this as something verify login with a valid username and password. Now again, don't give some titles. See, manual testing is what that happens in most of the organizations. Wherever this software is involved, we can say like 50 to 60% could be manual testing, another 40%, wherever it is possible, they automate the testing effort. Automating testing effort means what? At what level is that automation done? The test cases could be automated, or execution of the test case, that part could be automated, or designing the test case. There you can use a tool. You're going to see several stages of testing where any one of those steps could be automated, not all usually. So now let us consider this manual testing. So I'm giving it a title, verifying the login. There are some people who give like, not so meaningful titles for the test cases. I cannot call this just verify login. There could be a number of cases. I have to verify whether I'm connecting with Facebook, Google and all that. But this particular test case is about validating the username and password, let's say. Then the test case title will run this way. Verify login with a valid username and password. For every test case, you also have to write a user precondition. What is this precondition? If I'm testing the login, he should have been already signed up. Only registered users can log in. I'm not talking about the sign up use case. I'm talking about the login use case. Only registered users can log in. So you can make a precondition that user is already registered using valid credentials. Now you don't have to write the test case. There are fresh graduates who, when given the test engineer roles, they write the preconditions this way. Log into your laptop, open your browser, go to the internet, type this, then start. And those things are assumed. So like, anybody who's going to run these test cases are expected to have those basic knowledge. So don't write preconditions to that level. Whatever is meaningful at this level, to let your test engineers know, only those things should be written as precondition. In this case, if you are not already signed up, you cannot log in. So I am taking a precondition that the user is already registered using valid credentials. Then we will have some test set where you can enter a valid username, valid password, click on sign in. That is your test steps, whatever you're going to write. Now, what is your expected result? Don't give, again, your expected result should not be user is logged in successfully. That is not the way of writing an expected result. What should he see after logging in? Today, if you are logging into, let's say, your Uber application, Uber or Ola, you see a front page where you can see the map being popped up. After your login, that is your first screen. Now, if you are going to Facebook or Google, you will see the news feeds. That will be your home page. So make it more specific. Any expected result cannot just say user is logged in as the result. User is able to see or is redirected to this particular page. That's how any UI testing should be done and described. Now, all these test scenarios is what we call as a test suite. You can combine whatever is logical. Maybe all this sign up, login, all those could be combined into one test suite. Then any type of functionality that he does can be combined into a second test suite. Like this, you can keep combining. It is very important that you ensure the environment is mentioned. See, today it depends. If you are talking about, I'm talking about testing a PlayStation, something is a game is running on that. Then no, I would be doing the testing in a different way. There are certain testings which you would do with your Wi-Fi. There could be a Uber application if you want to test. Doesn't make sense just to test it with your Wi-Fi connectivity. Why? That application is used on travel. So see if your test environment has your particular 4G or 5G network turned on through your mobile data. Otherwise, if you do not try that, in a real time, where is that Uber application going to be used? Of course, when he books, he may use a Wi-Fi connection, but after that, when he travels, he's not going to use that. What happens if you do not test that in one such environment? Then it may fail and it can have some frustrating customers. Think what are all the possible test environments that are required for one such particular screen or that UI to be tested. List that down. I'm talking about one row of test case document. You are writing the test case title, then you are talking about these credentials, you're talking about the expected result and the test environment. If it is going to be the same for multiple test cases, yes, you can carry it forward for other test cases, but it is important that each one of your test case is related to a particular test environment. Now, what will be the actual result? We have some fresh engineers, usually when we ask them to write the test cases, they fill this entire Google Sheet with all test cases, also with the actual result written down. How can we even fill the actual result when the test case is not executed? So leave that blank. Only when your actual result is found, you will go ahead and bring it. There can be positive cases and negative cases written here. Anybody quickly who likes to unmute and speak? You can give me 2 positive test cases and somebody 2 negative test cases. What do we mean by the negative test cases here? We are trying to test for failures. Positive test cases is giving an input which is directly valid. I've been talking for a very long time, so if you'd like to interact, you can feel free to unmute and speak. Let it not be like your usual classroom session. Let's have some inputs from you. Anybody interested to come up with some test cases? I want to show what could be the positive, negative test cases. We can also discuss what could be the functional and non-functional test cases. So anything like that you can say. On the chat. Hold on, I'm not. Okay, I can see a couple of things here. Okay, somebody is saying like, sorry, I didn't see the previous messages. I'm seeing the latest ones here. Okay, negative test case giving a combination. Okay, I think that is the password requirement that you are talking about, the combination. Username cannot be numeric. Okay, so now all these things, depends on what was defined as your initial password rule. Password cannot be a date. No, password can still be a date as long as it is given without all those slashes. So we will consider it this way. I'm not talking about, I think all of you are getting my question differently. You are trying to create rules on what is a valid username and what is a valid password. That is something defined as part of your requirement. Now, what is a negative test case? Yes, so Kaustubh has asked, what could be an example of negative test case? That's what I'm coming to. All that which you have written here is not a negative test case. You are trying to define the password policy or the username policy. This is still a requirement which you are talking about. If user is not inquiring as per required, yes, whoever has messaged now, this is right. If the user is not entering as per the requirement, then that is a negative test case. So first of all, you freeze your requirements. You have a requirement like password should allow this many numbers, this many characters. Yes, that is freezed. And then username should be like this. Negative test case means, positive test case means going as per the allowed rule. Whatever it allows, giving that and seeing if I'm able to log in. Negative test case means going against that requirement. If the password rule says I can have only lowercase and uppercase, let's say it mandates both, just try to give a password with only lowercase. The system should not hang. The system should handle it. Handle it in this case, what it should throw an error. The password requires you to have it this way. There should be a pop-up window which the developer has thought about for this error condition to pop up and say, give something here. So I hope now those of you who have asked that question, maybe you are clear. Yes, if user is entering not as per the requirement. Okay, let me go back to this. These are some positive and negative test cases. Again, in that, I want to show two different things. We will see some functional test cases and non-functional test cases. Maybe after we see that, with that, maybe we can close. Now see here, positive test case here means this. Verify if the user, the first one, verify if the user will be able to log in with a valid username and a valid password. That whatever the system considers as valid, enter that and see if you're able to log in. That's a positive test case. Now, what is the negative test case? So you try to give an invalid password, which is not valid as per that, and see what happens. Then that is a negative test case. And you can try any negative test case like this. Ideally, that field is expected to have some values. Username should also have something. Password should also have something. As an intelligent tester, you should write a test case. What happens if I give it as blank? When the field is blank, I don't give anything there, and if I click submit, system should not hang, system should not crash. It should prompt and say, please enter a username, please enter a password. Wherever blank fields are there, it should pop up and say that values are required here. Similarly, any other positive test cases, if we are talking about here, maybe there is a forgot password functionality. You can test that. If there is an invalid login, you can test those things. So if there is a, sometimes, we want to save the password all your for your further logging. Remembering me, that is the functionality that we call it as. Those things are considered to be positive test cases. Now, these are all functional test cases. What do we mean by non-functional test cases? What is that non-functional test case? Testing anything other than the regular functionality, testing the performance, testing the security aspects of the system wherever it is applicable. All those things are considered non-functional. Now, for non-functional, again, these are some examples of positive and negative. Take a negative case. See, there is a specified range that is given. So if the user cannot enter the characters more than that specified range, that is a negative test case if you test that. Then if you're doing on the browser and if you're trying to log in, what if you move on, click the previous button and try to go, if you have clicked that? So then are we going to log out from the system? Is the system behaving as expected? All these are some negative testing, going against the requirement and seeing how it responds. I'm not going through every positive case because most of the positive examples you may know. Negative things. See item number 5 there. So what if he is using a browser there and he is trying to log in with different credentials from the same browser at the same time? Then there should be some restrictions given there. Meaningfully, the system should handle all that. If that is done, then we can ensure that the system is working properly. This small example is just to show how a very simple login page can be tested using positive test cases and negative test cases. Now what we will do is, we will take one Google login screen, very simple example. This is actually the sign-in screen of Google. It looks very simple. We are thinking that there can be one or two test cases for this, but you can write n number of test cases just for the single screen. It's not you can write, you should write, so that any type of unpleasant experiences does not happen with your user. See here, this is your regular sign-in screen. This is like sign up. In fact, if you have not created a Google account, you first sign up and then you sign in. If you are talking about this sign up screen, this is how you create your Google account. This is how the screen typically looks like. You have your first name, last name, and all these things. So here itself, it will indicate. This is just an image of your regular Google screen. And then Sometimes if you have already created an account, this will talk about sign in instead, and you're going into it and trying to create it. So now if we are talking about the test scenarios for it, these could be, see, I have just taken 10 scenarios, important ones. You can keep developing it further to write, to completely cover. You have to have a complete coverage. What all could be the type of test scenarios that we are talking about? He can give a valid email address and click next. Fine, he can give a password here. Again, without any email address or phone number, if the next button is clicked, what will happen? The blank field should be highlighted, prompting for user input. And what if there is an invalid phone number given? Again, a message should be thrown. Like this, for each one of this, if we are talking about the username or the password, we can keep going in with n number of test cases here. So every field here should be validated. If there is a username, if there is a password, if there is a confirm password, each one of that should be validated. So if all these, see, for example, now whenever they are talking about some mandatory fields, we have to check if they are giving any valid details. And very common mistake that anybody does, for password, they will give one field, and again, when they have to confirm the password, they may go with a different one. Such things have to be tested. What if they are entering a email? Try doing all this. I'm talking about creating test cases to capture these defects. So you have to write it in a way that they enter a particular email ID. Email ID should be like, abc@abc.x, something like this. So you try to give a invalid email ID to see how the system pops up and what does it say there. All that should be typically checked. And one more thing, if that email address already exists. So first of all, you sign up. These things, we call as 2 steps to be done as part of one particular test scenario, where first you try to sign up using a particular email ID. Then the second test case should say, try signing up with the same email ID. We have to check if there are any errors thrown there. So if there is a duplicate email address, if that email address was already registered, then the system should throw an error that this particular email has already been registered. So any possible hint should be provided on your form. You have to check all these things, like how it says this many characters have to be entered. All these things we will have to typically check and see how this entire functionality works. Now I'm talking about Google sign up or sign in on the browser. So if we are talking about any other mobile application where we are talking about a login page of any mobile app, then there are several other things that you have to consider while we are writing these test cases. So how to typically test this type of mobile app. Now here we have to see what happens, any permutation combination with all your different username and passwords you can definitely do. Any other things here? Try signing it up with your Facebook account. Try signing it up with your Google account. Now, even these small check boxes here, keep me sign in. So even these things have to be checked. So you have to write several different test cases for each one of this so that we validate it properly. And whether this forgot password functionality typically works. All these things have to be completely checked to understand. And so we are taking a very simple login functionality. The end page, that final UI is as simple as this, like this or like this. But for this, you can write some 80 to 100 test cases if we are talking about completely covering all this. Test cases actually have to be taught and written, meaning you have to think and write. That is important. Automation also can only execute those test cases one after the other in the sequence defined. And software cannot write the test cases for you, like how you think and write the business logic, how you develop, how you program. The same way, the test engineers have to understand the requirements of the system and they have to write these test cases. If you're going to automate, we are going to automate the execution part only. Nevertheless, the test design and the test cases have to be fully driven by you. You have to write this many test cases. You can feed on to a automation tool, or you can use some scripts to fire those test cases. Writing is still there, involves real thinking skills. And another one is understanding the requirements of your software system. You should be competent enough, like the developer, the same way he understands to write the business logic. You have to understand it to think and write n number of test cases for each and every page to go and hit that. So I think with this, any questions that you have? Let me stop sharing the screen. Hold on. We'll continue further on different test screens, test techniques. So we will be, I didn't get on to, was planning to cover all this development models and the way the testing is done. So those things we will do it tomorrow. Whatever is the agenda for tomorrow, along with that, we still have some different models which we couldn't cover today, which we can take it forward to tomorrow's session. Any questions? Or anything else that you would like to be discussed tomorrow? Any specifics, any inputs? You can raise your questions on what we had covered today. Any other basic questions you have on how software testing is done, because we were doing the introduction part. Any such questions? I'm seeing something on the chat. A negative test case can be one where you find if there are any loopholes in the application. Yes. So the things that you think the developer would have not covered. Loopholes here, I'm understanding your English this way, trying to identify defects. Otherwise, no, in regular English, loophole means like, carelessly we have left something. Here it could be he has handled that condition of accepting an invalid password, but then there is no pop-up, there is no error that that particular developer has introduced. What you are saying is right. That way of thinking and trying to see those areas on going against the requirement of the system is what we call as negative testing. Any automated software for testing? Yes, we have a lot of things. See, every programming language, if you're using Java for your development, then even for, we are going to see different testing techniques. For unit testing, it offers JUnit. You as a developer, always remember, you as a developer also has to test. Your own code you have to test. So you can use JUnit in that, where tomorrow we'll see, don't think testing is all about debugging. One way it is true, but you can give different test data and see how it works. Such type of tools are available with the major platforms. This is about unit testing. But when we are talking about this, yes, Python also has these things, the modules that Java, Python and all provides is for the unit testing part. When we are talking about other, as the developer, as he develops, can use those testing formats in the respective language, both Java and Python, to test that. But when we are talking about automation, do not confuse your unit testing with automation. When we are talking about automation, we are talking about running the entire test suite for that complete application. Unit testing is to test your code, what you have written. Use those respective things which the language offers, Java or Python. And if you are talking about automated testing, what we will do is we will build all those test cases. Now, how to write those test cases? We don't have to manually write those test cases on Excel sheets. You can use scripting. You can use JavaScripts to generate the test cases. So the test cases need not be written in simple English. That will be done only in manual testing. You use your JavaScripts and write test cases. Automation means only for generation you can automate, which means instead of manually writing, I've automated that part. Higher end of automation is even for execution, you can still use. We have tools like QTP, which is very commonly used for complete automation, end-to-end automation, right from generating. They have their own scripting techniques. Using that, you will write, and you can click on start, stop to execute those test cases. That is end-to-end automation. I have one question. Can we get internship based on testing? Now, I don't think internship is provided for testing. Why? Because testing is not easy. Internship is provided only for development to the level I understand. There may be some startup companies who require test engineers. There you can apply, but not other big brand organizations provide internship on testing. Why? Because people who are into testing should understand the complete requirements of the system. So once you are inducted fresh, forget internship. Tomorrow, if you are inducted in an organization fresh, they will give you the requirements, make you understand, and then write some test cases. Most of your internship will require you to be part of the team, which is into development. So if you are going as a test engineer there, you cannot add value without knowing the requirements. So I think the answer is no. Internship based on testing is very rare. If at all you get something, it may not be execution of the testing. It could be as a support person to write test cases. Any other questions? I missed something. There was one question. Hold on. We can't run movie on 2 screens simultaneously on Netflix or similar platforms. Yes. So these things are, if your requirement, this is nothing like, now when you are talking about, if your question is what kind of test case, I think you want to know, are we doing a positive testing or negative testing here? There is no kind of testing here. This is basically called, if you're talking about the category, this is considered to be a non-functional testing, where we are seeing, I showed some examples, right? Comes under the category of security testing. As per your system's requirement, if you want to restrict running it on 2 screens, then a positive test case for it is to see if you are giving one other screen, how it happens, regular, one screen alone. If you try to log in or see the same Netflix through another screen, the negative test case would be to try that to see if it blocks or if it pops up with an error. But this comes under the category of security testing. We are talking about a non-functional testing category there. All questions there are done. Clarified somebody who asked. Okay. Okay, we are almost close to time or running little late. Are we done? Any other questions? See, all through this workshop, even in the next 2 days, we are not going to write any code or anything. Like, we will try to understand. If it is a white box testing, I will take a small piece of code to tell you how the coverage can be done. And then we would see API testing with the Postman. That's a tool used. We will take a small API and see how the response is sent and received. After we see some more testing strategies in tomorrow's session, towards the end tomorrow, we can have some Postman demonstration and all that. That's all I have from my end. Yeah. Okay, let me close with this if there are no further questions. The Zoom link for every day is different. It's not a recurring ID. So I will post the Zoom link 1 o'clock every day on the WhatsApp group. You can look at it and join. And the feedback link that you have posted here, sometimes we get queries on receiving certificates at the end of each day. I would like to clarify, end of the program, after we complete, we will take a day or two to consolidate all the participants, because it's not a webinar which is done just on a single day. This is a program which is being at least planned to be executed for 4 consecutive days. So end of every day, you will not receive any certificates. Don't worry. End of the program, after we process all the 4 days inputs, then e-certificates will be issued to you all. Thank you all. I'll catch up with you tomorrow, same time, 2:30. Thank you.